She woke up in a Millionaire's shirt and realized last night changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's go back to our main character. The rain hadn't stopped all night, tapping relentlessly against the window like it was trying to remind her she was still awake. Claire stirred, her head pounding, the faint scent of cedar and clean linen surrounding her. For a moment, she didn't recognize where she was. The sheets were soft, too soft. The room was warm, too warm. And the shirt draped over her body was definitely not hers. It was oversized, crisp, and smelled faintly of cologne. She blinked, trying to steady her breath, heart hammering as last night's fragments slowly floated back. The flashing headlights, the sudden downpour, the stranger who pulled over when her car broke down on the highway. She remembered shivering beside the road, mascara running, phone dead, soaked to the bone. And then him, the man who stepped out of his black pickup, jacket slung over one arm, voice low and steady, asking if she was okay. She had tried to wave him off, embarrassed, but he insisted on helping, his tone calm but firm. He drove her to the nearest inn when the storm made the roads impossible to see. He didn't ask questions, didn't try anything, just handed her a dry shirt and told her to rest. That shirt, she looked down at it now, the hem brushing her bare thighs, belonged to him. She touched the fabric, the faint imprint of his warmth still there. Who was he? She remembered his name Ethan, but little else. His eyes had been dark, focused, the kind that saw through panic and went straight to truth. And yet, something about the way he said goodnight lingered in her mind. You're safe now. Get some sleep. Safe. The word felt foreign. Claire hadn't felt safe in a long time. Her last job had collapsed overnight. Her landlord had already given notice, and the last call she'd made before her phone died was to a boss who never picked up. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. She should get up, thank him, leave before things got awkward. But when she turned, the empty chair by the window told her he was gone. Only a folded note lay on the table beside a steaming mug of coffee still warm, like he had just left. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded it. Didn't want to wake you. Keys are at the front desk. Stay dry out there. No signature, no number, just that. For a second, she almost laughed. Who helps a total stranger in the middle of nowhere and disappears before sunrise? Maybe it was better that way one night of kindness, nothing more. Yet as she looked at the coffee, the note, and the shirt hanging loosely on her shoulders, a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. Outside, the storm had quieted to a drizzle, and sunlight crept through the blinds, tracing thin golden lines across the bed. She whispered to herself, Ethan, testing the name like it might bring him back. Somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief, she smiled a small, hesitant smile she hadn't worn in months. She didn't know it yet, but the man who vanished with the sunrise hadn't really disappeared. The shirt she was wearing carried more than warmth, it carried a story waiting to return. And when it did, everything she thought she knew about luck, love, and fate would change forever. Claire sat in the small inn cafe, both hands wrapped around the warm mug Ethan had left for her. The coffee had gone lukewarm, but she could not bring herself to drink it. Her reflection in the window looked fragile, her eyes swollen from a night of half-sleep and confusion. She told herself not to overthink, that maybe this was just a random act of kindness, nothing more. But deep down she knew it had been a long time since anyone had cared enough to stop. She checked her phone. No signal. The storm must have knocked out the tower. Outside, the world was still gray, soaked and half awake, and so was she. Claire reached for her bag only to find her wallet missing. Her heart skipped. She searched again, flipping through her purse, the pockets of her jacket, the edge of the bed. Nothing. Panic rose in her chest like a flood. Her last bit of cash, her ID, her bus card gone. She clenched her teeth, whispering to herself, of course. Why would anything go right today? She pressed her palms against her forehead, fighting the urge to cry. The storm had stranded her overnight. Now she could not even pay for the room she had slept in. The innkeeper, a kind older woman, had already refused payment when Ethan carried her in last night. Your friend already took care of it, she had said with a soft smile. Friend. The word echoed in Claire's mind. Ethan had paid for her stay. Her throat tightened again, a mix of gratitude and guilt. She hated being someone who needed rescuing. All her life she had fought to be self-sufficient, to not owe anyone anything. And yet, here she was in a stranger's shirt, in a stranger's kindness. Pulling herself together, she stood and folded the note he left, slipping it into her pocket like a small promise. She returned the key at the front desk, thanked the innkeeper, and stepped outside. The air smelled like wet asphalt and pine. The clouds were breaking apart, light spilling through in sharp silver streaks. She started walking toward the nearest gas station she could see down the road, her shoes squelching in the puddles. Her car was still parked by the highway, probably soaked inside by now. She needed a tow truck, maybe a miracle. Halfway down the road, she noticed something shiny tucked under her windshield wiper, a folded envelope sealed in plastic. Her name was written on it in careful handwriting. Claire froze. She tore it open, her pulse thudding. Inside was a small stack of bills, $50, and a short note. For gas and breakfast. You look like you needed a break. Take care. E. She stood there for a long moment, the wind tugging at her hair. It was not the money that made her chest ache, it was the gentleness. No pity, no demand, just quiet understanding. Whoever Ethan was, he had looked at her like she was not invisible. She glanced at the endless stretch of road, wondering where he was now. Maybe he was already miles away, on his way to some meeting or back to his real life, the one she could never touch. She smiled faintly, whispering, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Later that afternoon, she finally managed to reach a mechanic who towed her car to the nearest town. While waiting in the lobby, she borrowed the shop's Wi-Fi and opened her email. Dozens of messages flashed on screen: unpaid bills, a rent reminder, another rejection letter. "We regret to inform you." Her heart sank. She shut the phone off. For a long time, she just sat there, staring at her hands, remembering the warmth of Ethan's voice when he said, "You're safe now." Maybe safety was not about money or success. Maybe it was about moments like that, unexpected, undeserved kindness. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and whispered, "All right, Claire, time to move." She would figure it out. She always did. But for the first time in years, she did not feel entirely alone. What she did not know was that somewhere not too far away, Ethan was standing in his office window, still wearing the damp jacket she had handed back before falling asleep, staring at the same stretch of sky, wondering if she was okay. Claire sat in the small inn cafe, both hands wrapped around the warm mug Ethan had left for her. The coffee had gone lukewarm, but she could not bring herself to drink it. Her reflection in the window looked fragile, her eyes swollen from a night of half-sleep and confusion. She told herself not to overthink, that maybe this was just a random act of kindness, nothing more. But deep down she knew it had been a long time since anyone had cared enough to stop. She checked her phone. No signal. The storm must have knocked out the tower. Outside, the world was still gray, soaked and half awake, and so was she. Claire reached for her bag only to find her wallet missing. Her heart skipped. She searched again, flipping through her purse, the pockets of her jacket, the edge of the bed. Nothing. Panic rose in her chest like a flood. Her last bit of cash, her ID, her bus card gone. She clenched her teeth, whispering to herself, "Of course. Why would anything go right today?" She pressed her palms against her forehead, fighting the urge to cry. The storm had stranded her overnight. Now she could not even pay for the room she had slept in. The innkeeper, a kind older woman, had already refused payment when Ethan carried her in last night. "Your friend already took care of it," she had said with a soft smile. Friend. The word echoed in Claire's mind. Ethan had paid for her stay. Her throat tightened again, a mix of gratitude and guilt. She hated being someone who needed rescuing. All her life she had fought to be self-sufficient, to not owe anyone anything. And yet, here she was in a stranger's shirt, in a stranger's kindness. Pulling herself together, she stood and folded the note he left, slipping it into her pocket like a small promise. She returned the key at the front desk, thanked the innkeeper, and stepped outside. The air smelled like wet asphalt and pine. The clouds were breaking apart, light spilling through in sharp silver streaks. She started walking toward the nearest gas station she could see down the road, her shoes squelching in the puddles. Her car was still parked by the highway, probably soaked inside by now. She needed a tow truck, maybe a miracle. Halfway down the road, she noticed something shiny tucked under her windshield wiper, a folded envelope sealed in plastic. Her name was written on it in careful handwriting. Claire froze. She tore it open, her pulse thudding. Inside was a small stack of bills, $50, and a short note. For gas and breakfast. You looked like you needed a break. Take care. E. She stood there for a long moment, the wind tugging at her hair. It was not the money that made her chest ache. It was the gentleness. No pity, no demand, just quiet understanding. Whoever Ethan was, he had looked at her like she was not invisible. She glanced at the endless stretch of road, wondering where he was now. Maybe he was already miles away, on his way to some meeting or back to his real life, the one she could never touch. She smiled faintly, whispering, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Later that afternoon, she finally managed to reach a mechanic who towed her car to the nearest town. While waiting in the lobby, she borrowed the shop's Wi-Fi and opened her email. Dozens of messages flashed on screen: unpaid bills, a rent reminder, another rejection letter. "We regret to inform you." Her heart sank. She shut the phone off. For a long time, she just sat there, staring at her hands, remembering the warmth of Ethan's voice when he said, "You're safe now." Maybe safety was not about money or success. Maybe it was about moments like that unexpected, undeserved kindness. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and whispered, "All right, Claire, time to move." She would figure it out. She always did. But for the first time in years, she did not feel entirely alone. What she did not know was that somewhere not too far away, Ethan was standing in his office window, still wearing the damp jacket she had handed back before falling asleep, staring at the same stretch of sky, wondering if she was okay. 3 days later, Claire walked along the narrow streets of downtown Brookhaven, the small envelope still tucked in her wallet. The $50 had stretched further than she expected: some groceries, a cheap bus ticket, and a second-hand blazer she found at a thrift store. She had an interview today at a local design firm, a long shot she almost gave up on. Her reflection in a storefront window caught her off guard, tired eyes, hair tied back, wearing the same shirt beneath her jacket, the one that had belonged to Ethan. She told herself it was silly, but somehow it felt like armor, a quiet reminder that she was not broken yet. The rain had stopped for good now, leaving behind the clean scent of asphalt and lilacs. She checked the time: 9:45 a.m. The interview was at 10. Her stomach churned with nerves. She whispered, "You can do this," under her breath as she stepped into the glass building. The receptionist greeted her with a polite smile and led her to the waiting area. As she sat there, flipping through a magazine she could not focus on, her mind kept drifting back to that night. She wondered where Ethan was, what he did for a living, and why someone so kind would disappear without a trace. But life did not give her answers, only tests, and this interview was one of them. When her name was finally called, she stood, straightened her shoulders, and walked into the office. The manager, a woman named Mrs. Rhodes, was cordial but brisk, glancing at Claire's thin resume. "You have potential," she said, "but our firm is looking for someone with at least 3 years of project experience." Claire forced a smile. "I understand. I just need one chance to prove I can handle it." The woman's eyes softened slightly, but the conversation ended with the familiar phrase, "We will keep your information on file." As Claire stepped back into the sunlight, disappointment pressed down on her chest. She had done everything right, and it still was not enough. She found a bench outside, sat down, and stared at the traffic passing by. Then she noticed a man across the street, dark hair, gray suit, tall, focused, his back turned as he spoke to someone beside a sleek black car. For one dizzy moment, her heart stopped. It looked like him. She blinked, unsure. The same build, the same calm posture. But before she could cross, a group of people surrounded him, shaking his hand. A photographer snapped a picture. Claire hesitated. He turned slightly, and the morning sun caught the edge of his face. It was Ethan. He was talking to a city official, signing something on a clipboard. The car behind him had a logo on the door: Carter Industries. She froze. Carter Industries. She had seen that name on billboards, on job listings, on the side of half the buildings in the city. Ethan Carter. The name hit her like a wave. He was not just a kind stranger. He was the CEO of one of the largest development firms in the state. Her pulse raced. The man who gave her his shirt, his money, his quiet compassion was a millionaire. She stared, speechless, as he finished his conversation and climbed into the car. The driver closed the door, and in seconds he was gone, lost in the current of traffic. She sat there for a long time, the world spinning a little too fast. How could someone like that cross paths with her, a woman barely keeping her life together? It felt like fate's cruel joke. That night, Back in her small rented room, she laid the shirt on the bed, smoothing out the fabric. For the first time, she noticed a faint monogram stitched inside the cuff. E. Carter. It confirmed everything. She laughed softly, shaking her head in disbelief. She whispered, "A millionaire, of course." But beneath the surprise, something deeper stirred a quiet determination. Maybe the universe had not sent him to rescue her. Maybe it had sent her a mirror to remind her of the strength she forgot she had. She picked up her laptop, reopened her portfolio, and began applying for more jobs. Her fingers moved faster this time, her mind clearer. Somewhere out there, Ethan Carter lived a life far above hers. But maybe their paths were not done crossing yet. She did not know when or how, but she felt it in her bones. The story that began with a storm was far from over. 2 weeks passed, and the memory of that morning refused to fade. Every time Claire closed her laptop, the image of Ethan Carter stepping into that black car flashed before her eyes. The monogram on the shirt cuff was proof enough, but part of her still could not believe it. Why would a man like him, a millionaire with a fleet of cars and a company worth more than she could ever imagine, stop on a deserted highway to help a stranger drenched in rain? The question haunted her, yet somehow it also drove her. She threw herself into job applications, volunteering at a local shelter during the evenings to keep her mind steady. Life had not changed overnight, but something inside her had. One Tuesday morning, as she handed out flyers for the shelter's upcoming fundraiser, a woman approached the table. "Excuse me," she said. "You are Claire, right?" Claire nodded, surprised. The woman smiled warmly and extended a hand. "My name is Linda. I manage event staffing for Carter Foundation. We are hosting a charity gala this Friday, and one of your coordinators mentioned your name. We could use an extra pair of hands if you are available." Claire froze. The Carter Foundation. Her heart skipped. The name could not be a coincidence. Yes, I am available," she said quickly. Linda beamed. "Perfect. Black attire. Friday at 7. The event will be held at the Grandview Hotel Ballroom. You will check in at the staff entrance." As the woman left, Claire stood there clutching the flyer, the world spinning around her. Friday, a gala. And most likely, Ethan would be there. The thought filled her with a mix of fear and anticipation. That night, she laid out her only black dress and tried not to imagine what she would say if their paths crossed again. The evening of the event arrived faster than she expected. The Grandview Hotel glittered under hundreds of golden lights, guests arriving in sleek cars, laughter echoing through the marble halls. Claire kept her head down, helping arrange table settings and refill glasses, doing her best to stay invisible. But around 9 o'clock, she heard a familiar voice across the room. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Together we can build homes, not just buildings." The words rolled deep and calm through the speakers. Claire turned, and there he was, Ethan Carter, standing under the chandelier, tall and composed in a tailored black suit. The room applauded. Her chest tightened. He was every bit the figure she had seen from afar, confident, sharp, yet carrying the same quiet warmth that had once saved her. She forced herself to look away, but her hands trembled as she adjusted the wine glasses on her tray. When the crowd thinned and the speeches ended, she slipped toward the back hallway to breathe. But just as she rounded the corner, she collided with someone. The tray clattered, but before it hit the ground, a steady hand caught it. "You all right?" The voice was unmistakable. She looked up and met his eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Recognition flickered between them like static in the air. Ethan's brows furrowed. "It is you," he said softly. "The woman from the storm." Claire's breath caught. "You remember," he gave a faint smile. "I do not forget the nights that remind me to slow down." She tried to compose herself. "I should thank you for everything. The ride, the room, the note. You really did not have to." "Maybe not," he said, his tone gentle. "But I wanted to." The silence between them was filled with everything she could not say, the gratitude, the confusion, the distance between their worlds. Then a voice called his name from the ballroom, and the moment broke. He hesitated as if to speak again, then simply said, "It was good to see you, Claire." She blinked. "You know my name?" He smiled. "You left your business card in the inn ledger. I might have checked." And with that, he turned and disappeared back into the light of the ballroom, leaving her standing there with her heart pounding. She exhaled slowly, realizing fate had just reopened a door she thought had closed forever. For the next few days, Claire could not shake the memory of seeing Ethan again. The way he looked at her in that hallway, calm and steady, had lingered like the echo of a song she could not turn off. She told herself it was nothing, that he was just being polite, that people like him lived in a world far above hers. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she saw the way his gaze softened when he said her name. On Monday morning, as she was cleaning up the shelter's front office, Linda walked in carrying a clipboard. "Claire, good news," she said. "Mr. Carter was very impressed with how you handled yourself at the gala. He asked if you would be interested in a short-term position at his company's community outreach division. It is part-time, but it pays well." Claire froze, the mop still in her hands. "He asked for me?" Linda nodded. "Personally. Said you had an eye for detail and the right attitude." For a moment, Claire could not breathe. She wanted to say yes immediately, but a small voice in her mind whispered caution. What if he was offering out of pity? Still, opportunity did not come knocking often. She took a slow breath and said, "Yes, I would love to." 2 days later, she stepped into the Carter Industries headquarters for the first time. The building rose like a wall of glass and steel against the morning sky. Inside, everything gleamed polished floors, soft lighting, the quiet hum of purpose. The receptionist handed her a visitor's badge, and soon an assistant led her to the 18th floor. "Mr. Carter will see you now," the assistant said. Claire's heart thumped. She followed into a large office overlooking the city skyline. Ethan stood by the window, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, talking on the phone. When he turned and saw her, his expression softened immediately. "Claire, you came." "I did," she said, trying to sound calm. "Thank you for the offer." He smiled slightly, motioning for her to sit. "Do not thank me yet. It is a lot of work. The outreach program has been growing fast, and we need people who care more about people than profit. I remembered you from that night, the way you kept calm even when everything went wrong. That kind of strength is rare." She blinked, surprised by his words. "I was not calm. I was terrified." He chuckled quietly. "Courage is not the absence of fear, Claire. It is moving forward anyway." The meeting lasted barely 15 minutes, but by the time she left the office, her head was spinning. She had a job, a real one, and the man who once lent her his shirt was now her boss. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into the work organizing community projects, coordinating food drives, and drafting proposals. Ethan checked in often, not as a CEO hovering over an employee, but as someone genuinely interested in her ideas. Sometimes he brought her coffee. Sometimes they shared late-night conversations after the office emptied out. He was different from anyone she had ever met, focused yet kind, disciplined yet quietly thoughtful. One evening, as they reviewed a presentation together, the power flickered from an unexpected storm outside. The lights dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of the city through the windows. She laughed nervously. "I hope your company has a backup generator." "It does," he said, standing close enough that she could smell the faint scent of cedar and rain again. "But sometimes it is nice to pause." They stood in the quiet for a moment, the air thick with unspoken things. Then the lights came back on, and he stepped back, his voice steady. "Good work today, Claire. You are making a real difference." She smiled, heart racing. "You believed in me before I even believed in myself." "That," he said gently, "is what leaders are supposed to do." She watched him walk away, realizing that her world had changed in ways she never expected. The man who had once saved her from a storm was now leading her toward a new kind of future, one she was finally ready to reach for. By the end of her first month at Carter Industries, Claire had found her rhythm. She arrived early every morning, her desk already stacked with reports and emails to sort through. The work was demanding, but it gave her purpose. For the first time in years, she did not feel like she was drifting. Ethan had built a culture of integrity in his company, one where helping others was not a slogan but a mission. He had created a division that funded shelters, rebuilt schools, and provided medical aid for struggling communities. And now, Claire was part of that mission. Each day brought new challenges, but also a growing sense of belonging. Ethan often stopped by her office late in the afternoon, not with instructions but with questions, real ones. "What do you think of the new proposal?" he would ask, leaning against the doorframe. Or, "If it were up to you, how would we make this program better?" At first, she stumbled through her answers, nervous to speak in front of him, but his steady patience drew her out. Over time, she began to see what made him different from every other boss she had known. He listened. He valued ideas, not titles. And when he smiled, it was never performative. It was genuine, quiet, and disarming. One evening, after a long meeting, he invited the outreach team to join a charity event at a youth center his foundation had built years ago. Claire volunteered to stay late and help set up. By the time the last of the volunteers left, the sun had dipped below the skyline, painting the gym windows in amber light. Claire was stacking chairs when she heard footsteps behind her. "Still working?" Ethan's voice was calm, familiar. She turned, smiling. "Old habits. I like finishing what I start." He nodded. "That is one of the reasons I hired you." He moved closer, picking up a folded banner to help. For a while, they worked in comfortable silence. When they were done, Ethan looked around the room, hands on his hips. "You know, this place was my mother's idea. She believed that if people had somewhere to go after school, fewer of them would end up lost." Claire glanced at him. His voice had softened. "She passed away before it opened," he added quietly. "I promised her I would keep it running." The honesty in his tone surprised her. It was rare to see this side of him, the man behind the title. "You kept your promise," she said gently. "She would be proud." He smiled faintly, his eyes meeting hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Maybe," he said, "but some days it still feels like I am trying to fill shoes that do not fit." Claire hesitated before replying, "You are doing more than filling them. You are walking in your own." For a long second, neither of them moved. Then he cleared his throat softly. "You have a way with words, Claire." "Occupational hazard," she replied with a small laugh. He chuckled, the sound echoing lightly in the empty hall. "Come on, I will walk you out." They stepped into the cool night air together. The streetlights cast soft halos across the pavement. As they reached her car, she turned to thank him, but he spoke first. "You remind me of why I started this work. People like you make it matter." She blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. "I am just doing my job," she said. "No," he replied quietly, "you are doing more than that." For a moment, time seemed to slow. There was a quiet understanding between them, an invisible thread neither dared to name. Then he smiled, stepping back. "Drive safe, Claire." She nodded, her pulse racing. As she drove away, she could still see him in the rearview mirror, hands in his pockets, watching until her taillights disappeared. That night, lying in bed, Claire stared at the ceiling, unable to stop smiling. Somewhere between the storm that first brought them together and the work that now connected them, something had shifted. She was no longer the woman who needed saving. She was becoming someone who could stand beside him and maybe, just maybe, change his world too. The weeks that followed were some of the most fulfilling of Claire's life, yet something began to shift beneath the surface. The more she worked with Ethan, the more she saw how deeply he cared about his company's mission, but she also noticed the distance he kept from people around him. He had built walls made of charm and control, always polite but never fully open. One Thursday afternoon, after finishing a long presentation that earned praise from the entire board, Ethan called her into his office. His tone was calm, but there was something in his eyes that made her uneasy. "Claire, there is something I need to ask," he said. "Some members of the board have been questioning your sudden hiring. They think I am too invested in you." She blinked, taken aback. "Too invested? What does that mean?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "They think you might be receiving special treatment. I know it is not true, but I need to be transparent." The words stung more than she expected. "Ethan, I worked for everything I have done here. You know that." "I do," he replied quickly, his expression earnest. "But people talk, and I have to manage appearances." His words were logical, but they carried a weight that pressed against her chest. She nodded stiffly. "Of course, I would not want to cause problems for you." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Claire, listen to me. I trust you. You have done nothing wrong." But trust could not erase the whisper of doubt that had already crept into her mind. That evening, as she walked through the lobby, she overheard two employees whispering near the elevator. "That new girl, Claire, right? You know she got her job because the boss has a soft spot for her." "Yeah, I heard she met him before all this. Probably another one of his projects." Their laughter felt like knives. Claire turned away, her stomach twisting. For the first time since joining Carter Industries, she felt small again. That night, she sat in her apartment staring at the city lights outside her window. The words replayed over and over. Was she just a project? A charity case Ethan had decided to help? The thought broke something fragile inside her. The next morning, She went to work early and left a letter on his desk. It was short and simple. "Thank you for everything, but I think it is time I find my own path." She placed her badge beside it and walked out before the office filled. When Ethan arrived an hour later, his assistant found him standing motionless, the letter in his hand. He read it twice, disbelief tightening his jaw. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. By the time he reached the parking garage, her car was gone. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter, the man who built an empire out of control and order, felt completely powerless. And somewhere across town, Claire sat on a park bench, staring at the skyline, wondering if she had just walked away from the best thing that had ever happened to her. For days, Ethan tried to reach Claire, but every call went to voicemail. The silence gnawed at him more than he wanted to admit. Meetings blurred together, his focus shattered by the image of her walking out of his office for the last time. It was not anger that haunted him, but guilt. He had let the noise of other people's opinions push away the one person who reminded him why he started helping others in the first place. On the fourth evening, he drove aimlessly through the city until he found himself outside the shelter where she used to volunteer. The building was still lit, laughter echoing faintly from inside. He parked and went in. One of the coordinators recognized him immediately. "Mr. Carter, what brings you here?" Ethan gave a small, almost sheepish smile. "I am looking for someone. Claire Bennett. Has she been around?" The woman's face softened. "She came by earlier. She dropped off some donations and said she was heading to the old community art center near Riverside." Ethan thanked her and left, his pulse quickening. When he reached the art center, the lights were dim, but through the windows he saw her standing alone among the easels, cleaning brushes, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, completely unaware he was watching. He stepped inside quietly, the door creaking. She turned, startled, and the moment their eyes met, time seemed to hold still. "Ethan," she breathed, surprised. "What are you doing here?" He took a step closer. "Looking for you. I read your letter." Her hands tightened around the rag she was holding. "You did not have to. It said everything." "No, it did not," he said firmly. "You walked away because of what others said. But Claire, you were never just a project. You are the reason this company's work means something again." She shook her head, tears welling. "I could not stand being the rumor that ruined your name. I did not want to be another headline." "You could never ruin anything," he said softly. "You made it better." There was a long pause before she whispered, "Then why did you not fight for me?" His expression faltered. "Because I thought giving you space was the right thing to do. I was wrong." The silence that followed was heavy but honest. Then he took a slow breath and said, "Come back, Claire. Not because I need you at Carter Industries, but because I miss seeing the world the way you do." Her eyes searched his face for a long moment, then she smiled faintly through the tears. "I am not sure where I belong anymore. You belong right where you are standing," he said quietly. And for the first time she believed him. Months later, the Community Art Center reopened under a new name, the Bennett Project, fully funded by Carter Industries. Claire stood beside Ethan at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, her heart full as children painted on fresh canvases behind them. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, but for once, the noise did not matter. Ethan leaned toward her and whispered, "You see, this was never about saving anyone. It was about finding something worth building together." She smiled, her eyes soft with gratitude. "And you kept your promise," she said quietly. "You turned kindness into something permanent." He reached into his pocket and handed her a small box. Inside was the cuff from his shirt, now framed in glass with the initials still stitched inside. "You kept this," she said, her voice trembling. "I told you," he replied with a gentle smile. "Some things are meant to come full circle." As the crowd cheered and the ribbon fell, Claire looked at him and finally understood what began as a rescue had become a partnership built on trust, compassion, and something deeper than either of them had expected. Love had found its way back through the storm.